you're not really designing for your peers, you're designing for your ego.
Just because somebody is well known in their field or getting a lot of praise doesn't mean that they are necessarily the best in their field.
In high school, you can look attractive, like the right things, and that will get you places. In design or art, it's a meritocracy. So based on your merit, your ability to perform, you can be cool. So you do see that a lot more, but it's true. Being part of those groups will get you more opportunities as well.
Welcome back to the Honest Designers Show, where we bring you a transparent, real look into what life's really like as a modern designer. In this episode, we address a listener question, but this is something which I think we've all felt and experienced. Design cliques, feeling left out, and the ego which can be so attached to us as creatives these days, whether it's social media followers or not being in with the right crowd. We talk about losing some of that passion that you perhaps had when you were a kid, as it's taken over with things like comparison syndrome, negativity, and self-doubt. This episode is so important, so I hope you enjoy it, and most of all, I hope it leads to a positive mindset shift in your work. Well, fancy seeing you guys here.
Hey,
this is
Tom!
Strange. It's been a little while.
Yeah.
I missed you.
We missed you too.
Y'all look like you've aged years.
Oh, thanks, Dustin.
Did something strenuous happen over the past year or something?
No, it's been a breeze.
I think it might have, yeah.
It flew by.
Yeah, we have been ravaged by the sands of time, but we are excited to be back with you, dear listeners. It has been quite a hiatus. I can't even remember. When did we stop season 1? I mean, I know we went for like 4 years before stopping
the longest season in history.
It was like the end of 2020, I think.
Yeah.
What a year that was, in all respects. And I think by the time this is released, we've pretty much been underground for about 6 months, building up to this, which is season 2 officially of the Honest Designer Show. Whoop, whoop. It's good to be back. This season has so much great stuff lined up. We have some amazing guests that I am not going to spoil just yet. Trust me when I say there are some huge names jumping on the show. We have some incredible topics. We're going to be answering your questions and a whole lot more. And of course, we're keeping things super honest, super candid, and staying true to what this show is all about. So without further ado, shall I pick out the topic and the question that's going to take us into this episode, guys?
Yes, please.
Go ahead, Tom.
Yes.
All right. So this first episode of season 2 was actually inspired by Nicola M, who is on Instagram, color_n_light on Instagram, and color is spelled with a U in it, the correct way, the UK way. So
we just lost all our audience now, Tom.
Yeah,
absolutely. Off to a good start. And Nicola actually messaged Lisa this question when she heard we were recording for season 2 and said, "Hey Lisa, I'm not sure if you've discussed this topic on the podcast, but I wondered what you think about cliques in the design world. My experience relates to being a uni student." That's university student for any international folk. There are times when you see certain people getting a lot of kudos and attention and others feeling invisible. I'm feeling like the latter, despite having received high grades and a couple of awards. How do you keep a level head and remain focused and confident when you are witnessing the clique in action? It's very strange to me because I thought if you were passionate about design, then you just share that mutual respect and camaraderie. But this doesn't always seem to be the case. Maybe I'm naive. I know just having faith in your abilities is the key, and following your own compass is important. But for some reason, I feel my passion is being eroded at times. And we thought this was a really, really interesting topic and question to kick off this season. What are you guys hearing over there? In fact, let's start here. Have the four of us witnessed this? Do we know what she's talking about? Have we felt the cliques at play?
Absolutely, yeah.
100%. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's that kind of mean girls, right? You can't sit with us.
Well, yeah, it's also that pressure of I guess it's that whole pressure of trying to fit in, and if you feel like you're not fitting in, then you're just not part of the cool gang, which, I mean, that comes from school, doesn't it? Which is really yucky. And I don't know about you guys, but I think it actually carries on through life. Right till, I don't know, I'm hoping that not when you die, but, it seems to carry on forever, no matter what we do. And I think it's so important that's why I guess we always, beat that drum of, finding your own confidence and believing in yourself. But it is difficult. Sometimes you feel a bit yucky about stuff because you don't feel like you're part of the cool gang.
I mean, my grandma is 96 and she's in a retirement community, and there's still cliques. There's like a couple cool, like, old people.
Yeah.
And
that's ridiculous.
She's not part of it. She's like part of like the sweet group of old ladies, and then there's the cool ones. Or like when I started going to conferences, I realized, oh, there's some people that like have tattoos and smoke and look like they're from, like, I don't know, an American Apparel ad. I can't fit in that. I don't have any tattoos. I don't look as good as them. They look like they're
straight edge, man.
They look like they're Instagram models, and it's brutal. It reminded me of high school.
It is brutal.
Mm-hmm. So maybe it's just human nature. I think
Yeah.
it might be. Like it's the
Definitely.
same way. I think to an extent, humans are kind of capitalistic in many ways. And that goes beyond money. I think you stick a bunch of people together and hierarchies will start to emerge and all that kind of stuff, right? And like social media, right? Social media is just empty platforms filled by humans. And some of those humans end up with more followers and more audience and more credibility. And then again, it just creates this massive disparity and hierarchy kind of between the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah.
And you see this play out time and time and time again.
Yes, and I think where it gets a little distorted is the fact that just because somebody is well known in their field or getting a lot of praise doesn't mean that they are necessarily the best in their field. And I think people get the kind of like a bit skew when it comes to that, and then they try and emulate what that person's doing, and it's not necessarily their voice. But they think by doing what that person's doing, they're going to get the same attention. And we all end up looking the same, which is like the opposite of what we should be doing, Yeah, I think the pressure is too high often to fit in.
Yeah, I agree.
I think some people are blessed with not only the awesome talent, also awesome charisma.
Oh, yeah.
And just how those two combined can really excel a certain person. And if you see that and you compare yourself to that, it's really hard because, like, I don't feel like I have a certain charisma, and I'm just relying on my talent.
Come on, Ian.
Of lettering.
Don't be silly, mate. You're not that talented.
Oh yeah, so yeah, no hope. I'm only surviving on the fumes of you three, really.
I love that.
Like you say, it happens throughout other things, and I recently just sort of really noticed that sort of at school, not like especially in like primary school, which is ages like 4.5, 5 to about 10, 11. And it's still the same of like, who's got the biggest car, flashiest car, and the clothes they wear, and the amount of people they speak to on a school run. And I've got a 14-year-old car that's literally if one part of it goes, the whole thing will fall apart. And I wear the same black jumper and grey jeans every day. And but I know that, that I enjoy the job I do, and I get to design, and I get lots of opportunities through that. And so I think I'm comfortable in myself that I don't need to worry about that, even though I see it and I sometimes like, I wish I could do more, or that car does look really nice. Mm-hmm. But I think it's it is really hard, and you get it everywhere, and you can't get away from it. I think that's the point. And so it's learning to cope with it and trying not to focus on it. So
I have a story about this. So I went to Creative South conference, and actually this was the year I met Dustin for the first time. And Dustin, you remember I was there with Matt, my business partner, our creative director. Lovely guy, super talented, ran a successful agency, worked with some enormous companies. And not a single person there knew who he was, because he didn't have a social presence at that point. He didn't have a personal brand. Now he started building those things. He's getting much more known in the design industry. But to him, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind me sharing this, because it's something we talked openly about. It was literally like a whole new world, because he was used to dealing on the client side of things and having friends that were freelancers or other agency owners. And it was very much, to the question here from Nicola, it was that kind of level playing field and that mutual respect. And suddenly he was exposed to this world. And, I love Creative South, like best conference, awesome people. But inherently in any design community, you do start getting that hierarchical thing, and some people that are more known, and those people are often quite fawned over and get a lot of adulation and so on. So Matt walks into this new world, and he kind of grabs me. He's like, "What's going on? Like, what is this?" And I'm like, "Oh, that person that people are gathering around over there, they're like a big star on Instagram." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And he's like, "What about over there?" I'm like, "Well, that's the story behind that." And he found it quite rightly a little bit bizarre, because he was like, "This is not the world of design that I know." He didn't get that in his formal education. He didn't get that with his agency. He didn't get that with his business network. It didn't exist. But I think particularly social media is indicative of this hierarchical approach. And that has become so prevalent and such a part of the design community, for good or bad. And when you see something through the eyes of someone else, and I'd been so bogged down in it myself, I'd almost become blind to it. And then suddenly it's like I blinked and I saw it through his eyes, and I'm like, it's all kind of BS, isn't it?
Of course.
I looked at it, and like, obviously you go around, and if you meet someone and they're nice, they're nice. And if they're not nice, they're not nice. And that's really what it should be all about. And, are they interesting and talented and whatnot? And it just suddenly like hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, oh my God, like so much of this social dynamic and this community is predicated on social media followers and notoriety, and a lot of the stuff that Nicola talks about in her question. And it is bizarre, let's be honest. It's
very
weird.
It's very, very weird.
It's super weird.
Well, it's kind of like, it's like made the world into the school playing ground again. It's like, instead of it being at school, it's now on social media. And I think people get so intimidated and caught up in that. And I understand that. I understand when Nicola, when I read her question, I totally get it, because I know those feelings so well. I think we've all been there. And what's sad to me is that we start questioning our own ability, and we also start thinking that, hang on a minute, maybe good solid work isn't actually good enough. And it is. It really, really is. It's just that
absolutely
social media has made it kind of skew.
Well, I think that's the thing, is that it is in something like, say, design with clicks. There is actually a truly a meritocracy. Whereas in high school, you can look attractive, like the right things, etc., and that will get you places. In design or art, it's a meritocracy. So based on your merit, your ability to perform, you can be cool. You can literally be cool for who you are. So you do see that a lot more. But it's true. Being part of those groups will get you more opportunities as well. That's no lie. I mean, I've been on the side where I didn't know anybody, and I've been on the side where, you are known by some people, and the opportunities grow dramatically. But the good thing is you can do things about it.
Yeah, massively. And going back to the example I shared of my friend Matt, what's interesting to me is there were some people who were like, people literally fawning over them, trying to ask questions and get a piece of their time. And they're great people, but when I explain, I'm like, oh, that's because they have 10,000 followers on Instagram, but they're also super young and they still live with their parents and they're just getting started. And then what was really confusing is, and I'm like, and I know you've worked with billion-dollar brands and run an agency for 15 years.
Like, I want to know what he thinks.
Yeah, it's like on paper, I'm stood there with Matt and I'm like, he has tons of credibility and tons of experience, but no one knows it. And so the social dynamic doesn't then reflect, your actual worth or your value.
Well, that's the interesting thing. So in clicks in design, you're rewarded socially by doing cool stuff, like for example, making the kind of design and art that designers and artists consume. So if you make stuff that looks good to designers and artists, that's cool, that's fun to them, you'll have all sorts of followers and people that are fans of those conferences. You work with Pepsi and Nike, that actually might make you way more money, be way more beneficial to your career, but it will not make you well known amongst designers. So that's a very interesting part, because I've met so many people that are gigantic at conferences, very well known, but they are not making a proportional amount of income based on that, because the market for selling things that just designers love is very small compared to mass consumers. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. And there's two options. There's either you sell to your peers or you sell to the customer. There's like no other option really. And actually the option you want to choose, and the option that I choose, is to try and just help the customer really. And if it happens to help the designer, that's a bonus, or help my peers, and that's a bonus. And like for me, the thing is the sort of like I do YouTube because it opens up opportunities, because like I got to work with Apple because of my YouTube channel and put myself out there. So that's my personality part. But the majority of everything else I do is hidden behind my work and the stuff I produce, like resources or products for other people, that isn't like something my peers would pick up. Because one, they may already know, if it's like lettering peers, they may already know how to draw letters. So why would they need letter builder? That sort of thing. So you're trying to say, do I want to fit in with the cool kids, or do I want to be known as someone who provides value and products that help other people?
Yep.
And it's not the same for everyone else, but you need to sort of think about where your focus is, and that just helps you to sort of alleviate that worry that those groups are happening. There's like a meme going around where there's someone standing in corner party and they're like, no one knows that I've had like a best-selling product on Design Cuts, or that sort of thing.
Well, it's like music, right? Like there's musicians, and nobody knows them except for musicians, and those musicians know them, obsess over them, live and breathe them. And then there's the Beatles or the Stones or the Who, and everybody knows them. Wherever you go, you know them. And they both have their benefits, right? It's real cool to be a musician's musician. I mean, how cool is that? But it's different. What you get is different.
Yeah. I think the other trap that designers could find themselves in is you start besides the click thing, you start designing for your peers rather than, as what Ian was saying now, instead of designing for your clients. And, one of the things that I learned, I'm sure we all did, if we went to, just design school, is that they always say, often the comments that we got on our reports back was like, you're designing for designers. It looks cool, it looks funky, but customers can't read that.
Can I give you a paradigm? Let me give you a paradigm shift, Lisa.
Yeah.
You're not really designing for your peers. You're designing for your ego.
Well, there's that. Yes, exactly.
But it's true, right?
Yeah.
It depends though, because like I sell to my audience, with Retro Supply is really at this point largely illustrators, not even designers as much as it is illustrators. They might do design work during the day, for instance, and they do this artwork they love at night. But that's the audience. So we make stuff to appeal specifically to those people. So I suppose you can design for designers or design for your audience. Still happens my audience is illustrators of a certain type.
No, I mean, look, we're pretty fortunate in that regard because we are actually designing for our peers, essentially. But I mean, a lot of us, graphic designers, they're designing for the mom who's buying that baby food off the shelf of millions of other baby foods. That's who you should be designing for, not like, am I going to win the design award for this label for, this baby food? No, you shouldn't be focusing on that. If you get the award, that's cool. That's a bonus on the side. And then you can belong to the cool gang again. But ultimately, the cool gang is actually your client and getting your client to sell to their customers. That's the cool gang.
All right. So this takes it back to why. You got to think about your why. You have to think about your purpose. And Ian, I think, possibly got the same book, The Happy Sexy Millionaire by Steve Bartlett.
I haven't got it yet.
Did you get that yet?
I haven't yet.
Okay. So it's very good. It's also a slightly ironic title for anyone wondering. It's basically talking about like fulfillment and success and romance. It's kind of like a self-help book without the BS. But
cool.
There's a chapter in it where he talks at length about extrinsic motivation versus intrinsic motivation. And extrinsic motivators are basically some of the stuff we're touching on, where it's not the core stuff that actually matters to you. It's like external validation, it's vanity metrics, it's ego metrics, it's the adulation of your peers. It's all this kind of transitory stuff, which is ultimately BS, right? It's just appeasing your ego. And then it's been proven time and time again, very scientifically, all kinds of research papers done on this, that stuff is fleeting. And it doesn't last, and it's hollow, and it leaves you always wanting for more. And it leaves you unhappy. Whereas what leads to true happiness is if you tune into your intrinsic motivation, which is why did you pick up that paintbrush in the first place? Why do you love doing the thing that you love to do? And the closer you get to that, the happier you're going to be. And what scares me in the question from Nicola here is, she's a student. She's like probably, pretty young still. She's early in her journey and she's already fallen into this trap. Super, super young. She's literally, her question, she lists a bunch of different extrinsic motivators. She's saying, I got some awards, so, why do I still feel invisible? Like my peers are getting noticed more than me. I feel invisible. Like, other people are getting the attention. I haven't broken through, like all this kind of stuff. It's all so extrinsic. It's basically a recipe for unhappiness. And what I'm not hearing is like, you know what? I'm super lucky that I get to wake up and do the work. And I just love what I do. I love making art. I love design. It makes me so happy. I love that I get to do this instead of work a typical office job.
Exactly.
I love that I get to be creative. I love that I help people with my work. And what is interesting is, in season 1 of this podcast, some of the biggest names who you would think have the most extrinsic motivation, because they have all the followers and they have all the adulation, what do they talk about? They talk about the intrinsic motivation. The Aaron Draplins of the world. He came on and was super humble and down to earth and just said, I freaking love that I get to, play with type for a living and make logos. How lucky am I? I'm like a kid in art class. And he talked about all kinds of stuff in that vein, if you guys recall. He was so, so happy. Do you think Aaron Draplin would be Aaron Draplin, or indeed would be happy and fulfilled if he was saying, oh my God, like I feel so good because I got this latest award, or I got 10,000 more followers? Like, he doesn't care about that stuff. He cares about the work.
Don't you find that ironically, when you do follow your North Star, I know that's cheesy, but when you do start really listening to your own voice and, doing the stuff that lights you up, you actually become attractive. And what I mean by that is like the human race is attracted to that confidence, to somebody who knows where they're going, what they want to do and how they want to get there. And you will naturally create your own cool gang. I don't know. But you know what I'm saying? It's like, You can
You
bypass
will. You'll
all
end
that.
up with your own little group of people, like we have. I think we can all agree none of us are cool, but you know what? Our group, it's cool. You know what I'm saying?
The thing is, though, being like a graphic designer automatically puts you on a level of cool. Do you know what I mean? People are like, oh, you're a graphic
Good point.
designer.
Only
That's
a graphic
cool.
designer would say that.
Yeah.
Anyone else I know in my life does not give a crap about what I do.
That is so true.
That's true. Everyone's had that point where they're like, that's this font when you're a designer. And you think everyone's going to be like,
Wow, how did you
hold
do
on
that?
a second.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, they're
That's
just like,
quite
you
impressive.
freaking nerd.
Yeah, everyone's just like, you're such a loser.
Yeah.
Why would you even know that? Leave.
Yeah.
But, you know, so as a piece of advice, I think that can help to be the beginning of a path to solving this is,
Hey everyone, I wanted to jump in with a quick announcement. I'm incredibly happy and proud to say that the Honest Designers Show has found our first ever sponsor, Mike Jander. This sponsorship has meant that we had enough resource to actually launch this new season of the podcast. We've landed literally the biggest guest the show has ever seen, and we've been able to step up everything from production value to the content we bring you each week. Having Mike Jander sponsor this season just felt right. He's a great friend, and I've even recorded my second podcast with him for over a year. Mike is totally aligned with us in terms of values. He's honest, generous with his time, and loves supporting his fellow creatives. But most of all, Mike is an industry veteran and the go-to person for client services advice. I literally refer dozens of people every single week to Mike, as he has seen it all. Mike is sponsoring this season on behalf of his course, which is seriously a game changer for freelancers everywhere. It's by far the most comprehensive, highest quality course I've ever seen on client services, with over 40 hours of video lessons, countless downloadable resources, proposal templates, legal contracts, worksheets, and more. Mike demystifies finding clients, selling your services, pricing, project management, growing and managing a team, and everything in between. If you go to theultimatefreelancecourse.com and use the coupon code HONEST at checkout, you can get the deepest possible discount on this course and get it at the best price ever available. That is theultimatefreelancecourse.com using the coupon code HONEST. Now, let's get back to today's episode.
go after awards if you want, go after recognition if you want, but be sure to put in a mix of things that you really want, things that you, for example, with Retro Supply, during this past year, as we mentioned earlier, it's been a unique and difficult year. We had started to focus on community more. That was not because that was cool. There was nothing cool about doing that. You know, there's no sort of special props or gold star you get for doing that. But all of a sudden, you're interacting with people. At one point, we got a message from someone that said, "I've been stuck at home for weeks. My little girls are eating dinner, and if it wasn't for this hour and a half that you do this every week, I don't know what I would do. I feel more excited about art because of that. Thank you so much." That feels so good. It feels so good. Way better than being featured somewhere.
Exactly.
And for way longer. It never goes away. It just builds up in your heart. So try it.
Or
Try
making
all of
another
them.
$1,000, right?
Yep.
Right. So try those things too. And then gauge yourself in 6 months or a year, and you'll find those are the things that carry with you.
Can I say something about awards?
Yeah, please.
Dismiss. So at university and college and all those things, the awards are, gifted to anyone. When you come out of that into the freelance world and whatever world, you have to pay to enter those awards.
Yes.
And you realise that when you might, like, I've got emails. Right, so there's this awards coming up. I was like, oh, cool, typographical award, woo! And it's like, yeah, just
like
$250, $500, and you could be in for a chance. So it's like a really bad lottery.
It's like a raffle, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you can pay to get an award if you can show up at the right conferences, if you can pay the right influential clients or influential contractors, whoever, you can get, it's like the Academy Awards. You can go campaign to get yourself an award.
You know how many Forbes writers contact me and say, oh, for $200, I'm going to feature you in my article, and then you can put a thing on your profile saying Tom Ross featured in Forbes.
Yeah.
Really?
And I have peers, some of whom will listen to this podcast. I'm not trying to shame you, but who have done that because it genuinely builds credibility, and they think, why not?
I mean, I might do it for $200 if you're out there and you can do that for me. Email me, Dustin Retro Supply. But
that's a sweet deal.
That's not what matters in the long run. But message me.
Your new profile picture on social is just going to have that Forbes logo.
Yeah.
By the time this gets published, watch, I'm going to have a Forbes thing on my...
That's hilarious.
I had a stint on Clubhouse, and people were actually... You can get a PSD template where it's a Forbes magazine cover, and you Photoshop your face onto the cover. A bunch of people doing that as well.
Oh,
interesting.
Yeah, last thing about this. The thing about all these things is that all these... Getting, say on Forbes, having people think you're cool, that only works until they land on your page and see your work. And then if it's not awesome, if they don't like it, if they can feel that you're not into it, then it's all gone and it just dissipates into nothingness. So don't even do it, because once you know what I mean?
Yep.
It only gets them to the page, and then they're gone if they don't feel it.
Mm-hmm. So I'm rereading Nicola's question. And one of the sentences kind of stood out. So she's talked about, some people are getting kudos and attention. She's feeling invisible. And she says, how do you keep a level head and remain focused and confident when you're witnessing this? And I think what she's talking about in this part is essentially comparison syndrome. And it's really, really toxic because it gives you no benefit and it just gives you negatives. And I'm guilty of this at times. I'll look at people and think, oh, they built an even bigger business than me, or their community is even more engaged than mine, like whatever it might be. They're growing faster on Instagram. And I'll have these little pangs of jealousy, insecurity, and comparison. Does that ever help me? No, I just feel like a piece of crap. I feel significantly worse. And it sounds like she's slipped into a pattern of doing that on a regular basis, which is enormously damaging. And the interesting thing is, you will never align with these people. You'll never reach their level, have them as peers, or kind of reach these heights if you're the one who's sat there kind of insecurely seething about you're not where they're at.
Yeah.
It's just not healthy. And so, first of all, I would say a lot of that stuff's BS and you shouldn't aspire for it anyway. And you should kind of eschew these extrinsic motivators. But if you really want to achieve that stuff, then sat insecurely comparing yourself is not the answer. The answer is go and actually build something.
Yes.
And I realized this in terms of like business networking. I like to do a lot of that stuff. And I actually realized the best thing I can do for my network and my networking opportunities is build more impressive stuff myself, because then it will open more doors. More people will actually come to me instead of me coming to them, and I will look infinitely more credible.
Yeah.
And you see the difference, right? Like I could have built nothing and then just be cold outreaching to everyone. Hey, please work with me. We should collab. We should do this stuff. Probably wouldn't get anywhere. But if you reach out and they've already heard of you because you have some kind of brand or profile, or you can reach out and say, oh, hey, I've built this thing over here, and they're going to have that kind of respect. It's the same way that A-list Hollywood actors are friends with each other. It happens because people generally are drawn to others on their level. And that isn't because they're being hierarchical or douchey. I would say it's a kind of protective bubble.
Yeah.
Because if you're Brad Pitt and everyone on planet Earth wants to be your best friend and wants something from you, and constantly you got people pouring at you for money or your time, you are going to naturally be kind of shutting that out and protecting your space. So you're going to be friends with Leonardo DiCaprio. You know what I mean? That makes more sense than like the random guy in the coffee shop is going to become your buddy.
Well, a design example, or not design, but an example closer to our industry of that is, who of you guys remembers Gary Vaynerchuk when he was called Gary Vaynerchuk, not Gary V, and when he reviewed wines?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does anyone remember that? Mm-hmm. So he started reviewing wines for his parents' business, and he made videos every day where he would sniff the wines, tell you about the wines, talk about the New York Jets, do all this stuff, right? And then he started talking about that in social and how he did it. And that wasn't cool. I mean, reviewing your parents' wine shop every day is not cool, but he made it.
It's wonderful. I'll do that job.
I mean, yeah, I would too. But you know what I mean? Like, he was being himself. He liked the Jets. He liked wine. He wanted to, he loved his family, wanted to support them. And he just like talked about it. Nothing particularly triggers the cool trigger in your brain about that. But when he talked about it, and you see it every day, day in and day out, this person sharing their story, and then you see they're showing up every day, you're like, that is the coolest thing I've seen in a long time.
Yeah. It's what we were saying early on, is people get attracted to authenticity. I hate that word these days because everybody's using it, but it really is the case. We don't like fake, and we don't. Cause I was just thinking back, Tom, that when you were telling stories, that when I first started my illustration career, well, it wasn't really a career yet. I was still kind of figuring things out. And I mean, obviously, while you are figuring out your style, you tend to kind of mimic other people. And I found that to be the most awkward phase in my whole journey, because it just felt so wrong. But it's that whole thing of you want to be just like that person, or you want to be just like that trend, because that's the cool trend and that's the cool way of doing things, or illustrating. And I think that's the other thing to consider, is that besides trying to fit into, what the cliques are all saying you got to be doing, it's also hard work, because it's not who you are, and you end up wasting so much time and energy. And instead of just building, as you said, Tom, building something that is you and authentically you, and it's more natural, and people admire that and they are drawn to that.
I think it is attractive. You're right. It attracts people. Yeah. When you're truly passionate and you're consistent, and you're not the one looking around comparing to everyone else, you're just someone who loves what they do. That's attractive. I want to connect with people like that. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah. I mean, Lisa, you're really a perfect example of that. The kind of art that you do is, I wouldn't say that it's the coolest, trendiest art. It's very cute, classic illustration stuff done like at world-class level, but it's not cool, and it's not cool in the sense of like trendy, right?
No, I hear you.
Look, but you dominate. You put your stuff up places, you dominate, because for those people that like that, you've pretty much got like 95% of them are like, that's where you go. That's your Coca-Cola. If you like cute bunnies, that's the Coca-Cola equivalent of cute bunnies, and that's the one you get. And you've become ultra cool for that. You win.
Oh, thanks, Dustin.
I agree. What are you hearing over there, Ian?
I want to give another analogy about the people you're with. So at school, there's either the cool kids or there's the geeks. And the cool kids sort of, make fun of the geeks. But actually, it's out of a place of like, they're envious of the geeks, because the geeks have a community where there's like one level. There's no one better than anyone else. They have a common goal. Like, for instance, I watched a documentary. My boy's really into Lego, and there's this thing called the Brickventure on Netflix, which is all about people who love Lego. And there's all these conferences where there's people who just geek out about Lego, but there's no hierarchy. There's no clique, and they bring in whoever loves Lego. Do you know what I mean? And so it's and that's what it should be like with design, is that whoever loves design is welcomed in, and there's no, superstar of the thing. And even like the Lego designers come to these things and just, they're there and they just love hearing about the stories of what people are building and stuff like that. So there's no sense of, hierarchy that people feel less than. And I suppose that's what we need to produce in our environment, that area. And so what you want to do is gravitate towards the geeks rather than the cool kids, because they're just a collection of anxious people who just
Trying to keep up.
want attention, whereas the geeks are just like, let's just talk about design, and and so some of the best conversations I've had are probably with people who may not have the most following. I'd say that out of place if I've got a big following, but just
yes, Ian,
I just appreciate that you're talking to the likes of us, mate.
I know.
Me too.
And
little
just
ones.
that it actually doesn't matter. That those things don't matter. It's actually about what we're passionate about and what we like talking about, and not like, oh, I've done this and I got featured here and I got featured there. It's much more deeper than that. And I think that's what we're trying to emulate or try to emulate.
There's a great example of that from Derek Sivers, who was the founder of CD Baby. For anyone listening that's interested, he wrote a book. I think it's called Anything You Want. I believe it's called. Anyways, if you look up Derek Sivers, you can find it. And what he says is, he said, when I made CD Baby, I made the business. I realized I could make the world that I would write. In my little CD world universe, I could make it all the things I wanted. I could make this part fun. I could treat my employees this way and give them these things. I could make it so the clients got these things. You can make the world right. So it's an opportunity. It's your design career is your opportunity to make things right if you choose to do it that way. You might not be the coolest amongst everyone, but you can make it right for yourself. And there'll be other people that'll be like, I want to hang out in that world.
Yep.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing here, and we've touched on this a few times this episode, is if you're worried about cliques, create your own non-cliquey clique. And so just to clarify what I mean, I want to, and like Dustin said, we've kind of done that with this podcast. I've done that with all kinds of friends in the design space. I figure out the people that have no ego and that are really cool in my eyes, and I just make friends with them. And that's fulfilling, right? It's quality over quantity. I'm not worried about a gazillion followers. I'm worried about real friendships and connections with awesome people and passionate people who have comparable values. So I'm going to issue a challenge for Nicola, and indeed any of the listeners that this episode has resonated with. If you don't like how cliquey the design industry is, don't sit and stress about it and stew about it and make yourself feel worse. Go and set up a community or a Facebook group called the No Ego Design Group and set some rules and be like, you're banned from talking about followers or bragging or any of that stuff. We're here to make friends and support each other, and build the kind of clique or community that you wish did exist if you're not seeing that around you. And I guarantee that's going to be a way more productive use of your time, because guess what? In every industry, it's not just a design thing. There's going to be negative stuff. And if you just sit and stew and fixate on it, you're going to drive yourself crazy. Like, I have one foot in the design space, but I have another foot in the business and marketing space. And I freaking hate sleazy marketers. There's so many of these morons everywhere. They're taking advantage of people. But guess what? I start going down a rabbit hole of negativity when I talk about that stuff too much. It makes my blood boil. I get stressed. And as much as I'm trying to do like a public service by exposing it, I would not want my day job to be talking about that stuff nonstop. And I've done it, and like I've been in some public groups speaking out about it, and then some of the more sleazy marketers start like arguing against me, and suddenly I'm arguing with a stranger. And I'm like, this isn't fun.
No.
So why would I waste my time focused on the negative? Instead, what do? I try and find people that are awesome and that aren't sleazy and that do things the right way and do it with integrity, like you guys. And that makes me happy. And you see the difference? Again, it's like, it's kind of confusing to me. I do empathize, and I've definitely been there. So I understand where Nicola's coming from, but I just think by the sound of it, you're graduating soon. You're at university. I don't want her to go out like into the world on an initial wrong footing. I want her to go out with a close-knit band of like-minded comrades who are focused on their intrinsic values and the stuff they're really passionate about, who look out for each other, who form their own little group, who welcome others in without judgment, without ego. Surely that's a better approach than sat there being like, they got one more award than I did. Yeah. They're getting the attention and I'm invisible. And I'm not trying to, Nicola, I'm sure you're probably listening to this. I'm really not giving you a hard time. I'm kind of speaking to the masses. I'm speaking to myself and the group as I go on this rant, because I feel really passionate. I think it's so imperative that you course correct for your own sanity and happiness.
Yeah. And you also don't want, even if you haven't created that community just yet, because you're still finding your feet, it's the way to stay kind of grounded is to remain focused on what's important. What we originally said, it's like figure out what lights you up. Why did you take on design in the first place, and what are your actual goals with the whole design career? It doesn't have to be specific. It can just be an overarching goal, and that should be your focus. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what people are saying, what awards they're making, getting, and all that kind of stuff. It's more important, like are they actually earning decent, are they actually earning a living doing what they do, or are they just running around getting...
Are they happy?
Yeah, are they happy? I mean, as you said, Dustin, how many people have X amount of followers or are really well known in the industry, but they're probably not earning nowhere near as much as, not that earning is the be all and end all, but it's an indication of it's not important to win all these awards and still be successful in your career. You don't have to, that shouldn't be your goal.
It's a mirage of success, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
I think. Yeah.
And if you look at the wealthiest people in the world, they're not people who are, actors or on social media. The people behind the scenes sort of thing. And actually, it takes a lot of your time to be a face of something. And actually, where your business actually should be doing the work,
Yeah.
Whereas I'm not really in the face or doing the work at the moment.
I mean, we're ones to talk, but I think what you're kind of saying there is not everyone has to have a freaking personal brand. Just because it's the buzzword of the moment, not everyone has to have one.
No.
You can get by in life without one.
Oh,
most people I know, most successful people don't have one.
Yeah.
And exactly. Going along sort of Dustin's sort of train of thinking, it's like, I could go somewhere and go, oh, you've got 400,000, Instagram followers, and people go, oh wow. Whereas Dustin might come along and go, I got 400,000 email subscribers, and you're like, oh, that doesn't really think. But then mine doesn't equate to any sort of revenue, whereas that would do for Dustin.
Yeah.
And it's just that thing that the cool things are actually worth money. The uncool things are worth money. The cool things actually don't always, are very...
No, they're just shiny.
It's hard.
You got to decide what you want. Like if we go to a conference together and I'm like, hey, Ian, let's go to breakfast with some friends. If we want friends to go, you can go on Instagram and be like, hey, or I can tell people, hey, Ian's going to be there. Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll be there. Where's the breakfast? I say that. No one cared. No one will show up. I'll be eating scrambled eggs and bacon by myself. Ian can be like, at this place, meet us here. Bam. All of a sudden there's all these people, and I'm, what I'm saying? Like, you got to decide what you want.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I hear you. There's so many different indicators of success, I think, is what we're getting at here. Like, and a lot of them are bad, right? You got money, you got followers, you got awards, you got those extrinsic motivators that we discussed, but you also got friendship. And then you got some stuff in the middle, like, say, the kind of ego massage of like, I can get people to show up for me. Yeah. And it feels good. And I'm not going to lie, by the way, it does feel good. Mm-hmm. That same Creative South I'm talking about, I actually had started building my personal brand there, and I had a bunch of people coming up and saying hi and shaking my hand. I wish I could be like, didn't matter anything to me. I was like, this is awesome. I'm like a little micro celebrity. My ego's like never been bigger. It's terrible, right? But it's human nature.
Yeah.
And that's the truth of it. You get sucked into it.
I think it just feels good to to have some people want you to be with them, to be around you. Like, not be around you, but...
I just want to give you a hug.
No. Like, what I mean is,
want you.
We've all been that person in school at some point where you walk in the room, you're not sure where to sit for lunch, right?
I'm still that person.
Right. Yeah, we all are inside, right? So, I mean, when I go to conferences, like, some people know me because of Retro Supply. Not a ton. It's not like people are freaking out or something, but enough where like I can walk into a room and somebody will be like, hey, come sit with us. Like, let's talk. And that's really the 90% of the benefit, in my opinion, is just having enough to be noticed and be like, hey, I know you. Let's hang out.
Yeah, it's so nice. Like we got to do. Hey, I know you. I've seen your face on the screen for 4 years. We should hang out.
But if that's your only goal, I mean, if that's the only benefit from spending hours and hours of chasing fame or whatever you want to call it, then yeah, that's not much of an outcome, I think. I don't know.
Wait, you don't think a couple good friends is a good outcome to your life?
Don't twist my words, Dust.
Damn, Lisa.
I joke. I know what you're saying.
So I know we're coming up on time, but just quickly, I think it's worth noting that the people Nicola alluded to that are getting the attention and the kudos, as she put it, I know a lot of these people. We all do. And obviously I'm not going to name names, but I've coached some of them that have had crippling anxiety on the back of their success because they can't keep up with it all and they're miserable.
Yeah.
There's been others who, to the public eye, look like they're crushing it, but they're also miserable because they're not that passionate about what they're doing. And they chased a lot of these extrinsic motivators. It led them down a path of followers and growth, but actually they kind of hate what they're doing. So first of all, I want to say, like, to Nicola, those people are not as happy as they look most of the time. And then also, some of them are, but they deserve it. No one gets the attention and the kudos by accident. Life doesn't just hand it to you. And so don't feel, I kind of got from the question, maybe she felt a bit jilted or it seemed unfair. I don't think it is. Maybe they are better at putting themselves out there. Maybe they put more work in behind the scenes you haven't seen that is mapping out. They put more effort into networking. We've talked at length on this show in the previous